Major changes is coming to the Vancouver Canucks as star forward Brock Boeser speaks out on his future with the team, and new reports reveal shocking details on the Vancouver Canucks heading into this offseason. We have a lot to break down in this video, Darius, including the Vancouver Canucks future, Brock Boeser's future, and changes coming to this team that's going to leave a lot of fans confused. We have a lot to break down in that. Before we get into that, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll be here all season long, giving you updates from around the National Hockey League and your Vancouver Canucks, so you want to stay up to date on all of that. But with that, we got up straight into the first topic today, where Brock Boeser did a recent interview with Sportsnet. We're going to link it down below as well. But looking at this, we do see Brock Boeser on returning to the Canucks. He said, honestly, it's unlikely at this point. It sucks. It's unfortunate. I'm trying to play good hockey and then worry about everything after that. You can pause and you can read through this, but just going to throw it to you, Darius. What's your thoughts on Brock Boeser just pretty much coming out and saying his time with the Canucks are over?
Well, I think that all Canucks fans know, and everyone around the league, that, it was probably going to happen this way, that he was probably going to be leaving the team this offseason. But to see and hear the player actually come out and say that is pretty shocking to me, right? Like, we normally never see this even before the season ended. There's still a handful of games left in this season before it officially wraps up. And it looks like the Canucks are not making the playoffs this year. But, to have him come out and say this is pretty surprising. And, we kind of knew that this was the case, right? Like it sounds like he's either going to Minnesota or something else, right? Like he's going to another team. We don't know exactly yet, but he's been rumored to Minnesota, because I bring that up because he's been rumored to go there for years at this point, right? It's been so long, and you tend to forget how young this player still is. He's 28 years old. Like he can be a great piece for a team next season, but it looks like the Canucks want to go in a bit of a different direction without Brock Boeser, and they were obviously trying to trade him at this year's trade deadline. There's that crazy, quote and soundbite from Allvin about, if you saw what I was offered for, obviously Brock Boeser at this trade deadline, then you would understand why he wasn't traded. But I want to throw this back to you too, Mark. And Vancouver Canucks fans, if you're watching this, I'm curious about your opinion. So let us know down below. Are you upset at this point in time that they didn't just move him for anything at the trade deadline, even if it was a second or a third round pick, just to get something in return? Because at this point in time, you're losing a guy who's scored 40 goals for your team before. Obviously hasn't done it this season, although, he's had a pretty good season with 25 goals, and it's been a roller coaster for the entire, team, that is. But are you upset that you didn't get at least any, assets in return?
So the biggest thing is, listen, looking at Brock, everyone knew the painting was on the wall. He was going to leave with this team. He outpriced himself with Vancouver. 40 goals last season, having a down year. 25 goals, still almost a 30 goal score after missing it quite a few games to start the season. But my biggest thing is, listen, Patrik Allvin could have moved him. Even if you got a second round pick for Brock Boeser at the trade deadline, you wouldn't have lost him for nothing. He wanted to keep his core to go into the playoffs. They missed the playoffs, and you lose Brock for nothing. I think this is a big fumble by management. Listen, I'm a big supporter of Patrik Allvin. I love a lot of the trades he did. You got a big package for JT Miller, flip some more pieces to get even more players. But not moving Brock was a big just mess up on their end. And listen, Brock spoke on the season as well. It hurts. We had distractions this year and injuries throughout the lineup all year. Yeah, it's been a rough year, but there's no excuse. We didn't win hockey games when we were supposed to, and that's the biggest quote of this. Listen, this Canucks team has dealt with quite a few injuries throughout the season. They've dealt with a lot of key players out for a lot of games, and we're going to break that down. But Patrik Allvin and this team alone haven't made the playoffs. They got eliminated from the playoffs just last night or the night before, depending when you're watching this. You can see that they were eliminated. The Calgary Flames are the only team not fully eliminated yet. But looking at this, do you think there's a world where Brock does come back? Maybe he wants to come back and they can find a middle ground? Or do you think they're writing on the wall and it's pretty much done for Brock, the longest tenure Canuck, and this team?
I think it is possible. Anything is possible, especially in the NHL. But I think of a couple of years ago with Taylor Hall, where, he was really looking for that big contract, and then all of a sudden he was, having to sign with the Buffalo Sabres, and like other teams were like, you know what, we found our free agents already, and kind of passed them by. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I think there's a couple teams out there that would love Brock Boeser, obviously, right? And I think that, he was asking for $9 million. That was kind of the rumor that was flying around out there. But I think a lot of teams out there could use a guy like this, first of all, and Brock Boeser being on their team could flourish maybe even more than he was on the Vancouver Canucks. It really depends on the fit, right? And I think that, like I said at the beginning, Vancouver might be looking to go in a little bit of a different direction at this point in time. Not that that's necessarily a good thing, right? Because Brock Boeser is a great player and still relatively young, but injuries have been a thing as well, right? And missing time. So, and that's something we're going to get into in just a bit as well. So, you have to, take all those things into consideration too if you were going to sign Brock Boeser long term to a lot of money. So, I think that, the time has run up here. He's going to leave. I do think that maybe you should have probably just gotten an asset from him because you knew that he was going to leave anyway. So just get something, right? Because Allvin has been very good, like you said, getting pieces like Victor Mancini, for example, in return for JT Miller when that situation hit a brick wall, right? So he's been good in those ways. Didn't do it with this one, but yeah, Brock Boeser looks like he will be leaving. I just wonder where he's going to go because there's a couple of teams that really could use a player like this.
And listen, he thrives with a good center. They moved on from JT Miller, and that obviously hurt his production. But speaking of Patrik Allvin, we did get quotes from the article as well, where he did say, we have some really good building blocks here with the young players in the pipeline. I'm pleased with the goalie situation. I'm pleased with our back end. Our focus is to see if we can improve our forward group by either trades or free agents. Now, listen, before we get into the forwards that they can look at, what they're going to do, this defensive core is outstanding. You have a lot of young pieces. DPD has been outstanding. A gem of a third-round pick. Mancini is looking like the best piece coming back in the JT Miller trade. Yes, you used the first-round pick. Do get Marcus Pettersson, who's locked up on this team as well. But looking at the goalies locked up long-term, you do have Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen. Would you look at this back end with the goaltenders as well, Darius, as the team that could compete? And listen, Tom Williner is going to join this team in the coming days. This is a young, good defensive team. Do you think they can get away with running back the same group of defensemen and goaltending next season?
Yes, they can because they're going to get better because a lot of them are young. And, I'll speak to that in a second in terms of the prospects and guys kind of making their way in the NHL right now. But, you got Marcus Pettersson from the Pittsburgh Penguins in a pretty good deal where obviously, you flipped assets that you got at the trade deadline for a guy like that. And, he brings some experience. And I think that he's a good fit on that blue line and adds some stability. And then you got Victor Mancini, right? Who's a young, like he's only going to get better. He just made the NHL this past year. He was a 5th-round pick. He was not expected to make the NHL this year. He did. He surprised with the New York Rangers, which isn't hard to do considering their season this year. But, he's made an impact already with the Vancouver Canucks, and he's only going to get that much better. He's like 6'3". He's pretty quick. He's a good skater. He's a smart hockey player, and he's a right shot defenseman. It's hard to find those. So I think that he's going to grow into his game still. Like he's only going to get better. And obviously, like you mentioned, a couple prospects on their way up. So I think that the defense, I think Alvin's a very smart person, right? He knows what he has. I think that, the goaltending, I'm not worried about personally from the outside looking in, at least. The defense, I think, is pretty solid and only going to get older and better. It's the forward group. What do you do with the forward group? I think that's the biggest question for the Canucks right now. And how do you replace some of the production as well that you're missing from Brock Boeser? And not just that, I feel like the offense wasn't that good this year compared to previous seasons.
And listen, that's the biggest thing. Looking at the forward group, you do have key players going to hit UFA. Suter is a guy that just scored 20 goals for the first time in his NHL career. Brock Boeser made it pretty clear that he's going to walk in free agency. You have Atu Ratu, someone that may resign, and he's going to resign as an RFA. But this is the forward group that you need to make better. Listen, Elias Pettersson had a bad season. I'm not going to say that he never. I do believe he's still a franchise center. Philip Hedl was someone acquired in the JT Miller trade that went down with an injury. But this is a team that needs to add more up front. Jake DeBrusk has been outstanding, a streaky guy, as everyone knows, but he will continue to improve when this team stays consistent. Listen, Darius, I'm going to throw it back to you again. Listen, this is a team that needs scoring. Would you go out and spend all your money on maybe a center, or do you think this is a team that maybe adds a bit of depth scoring and a top-end winger?
Probably a top end winger. Like you need to replace the production that Brock Boeser is leaving on the table, obviously. So I think it's another winger. You made your decision with Pettersson, right? Like you kept him over JT Miller. So made your decision there. And then I think it's some depth scoring, just some guys that can come in and maybe make a difference, right? Underrated guys. They're going to have to do their homework and do it maybe in free agency, maybe even the draft, although that's less likely, I think, especially going into next season. But, through free agency, I feel like there's a lot of really good free agents available this season, and you're going to need to add a couple of guys because you lost a lot of games this season where a lot of guys did not play the entire season this year. So that's another storyline with the Vancouver Canucks, I think. So probably a top end winger, and we know there's there is one available in Mitch Marner. We don't know exactly if he's going to resign with the Toronto Maple Leafs yet, but maybe not Mitch Marner. But there's a lot of really good free agents this year. So maybe you look at the free agency pool, try to add a top end winger and maybe some more depth. I think the real focus here, honestly, I do believe that the defense and the goaltending is fine, especially as they continue to mature and get a little bit older. It's the offense for me. You're going to have to go out and make a difference, and it's going to have to be via trade or free agency. So maybe, you trade one of your defensemen to go out and get another, although I think that's tough considering, all the work you did to build that defense to what it is right now. But maybe make a trade to get somebody as well. It could be very interesting this offseason because things always get crazy around the draft.
And listen, going out to get a guy like Mitch Marner would be cool, but you want a playoff performer, so maybe stay away from him. But looking at the final thing from Patrik Allvin, he did make it pretty clear that they want to make the postseason. Their goal is an 82-game plus postseason. So this is the team that's not going to go in and retool. It seems like they're going to use the draft capital. They have picked through rounds 1 through 7, so they're going to use this in some way. What's your thoughts, Canucks fans? Do you think they're going to go out, make a big trade, maybe get a new center? What would you like to see filled a new center? Maybe Sam Bennett would be an awesome name, though it seems like he's going back to Florida. John Tavares is another interesting name, but you do get a little older with that. Let us know down in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode maybe tonight, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark Pye, with my co-host Darius, and take care.